Well, author and pastor Christy Wimber says transformation begins with a surrendered will. She admits obeying God's call in your life won't be easy. But as her late father-in-law, John Wimber, used to say, find where God is and get behind what He's doing. He always wins. Take a look.
The late John Wimber was a beer-chugging, chain-smoking musician who imagined his life would be one party after another. But God had a different plan. John became one of the founding leaders of the Vineyard, one of the fastest-growing church planting movements in the world. He passed away in 1997, but his daughter-in-law, Christy, is carrying on his legacy. In her latest book, Transformed, Christy shares how we too can be changed by the power of God.
Well, Christy, welcome back.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Have you. It's been a while.
It's been a while, yeah.
How long has it been?
Too many years.
Too many years?
Yeah, too much
What have you
time.
been up to?
Well, I've just been busy traveling the world, preaching all over, and hopefully advancing the kingdom in all kinds of different ways.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you finding out where God is and what He's doing?
Well, I hope God's in me, so wherever I'm going, I'm hoping that I'm taking God with me. But yeah, it's quite remarkable what's happening around the world.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, I'm in quite a few different things, but I was just talking a bit earlier how exciting it is of what God's doing in Europe. Mm-hmm. And just seeing the whole of the church come together and, cross over denominations, and for the sake of unity and for the sake of, Jesus coming and moving and on the church.
That's a new story.
That is a new story.
Most Americans would say, when you talk about Europe, they would talk, well, it's kind of a wasteland for the church. There's nothing really going on. But you're saying no.
I'm saying no.
God's at move. Yeah,
and that's actually what I was just talking about briefly, because I'm very encouraged about what I see around the world, especially in Europe, actually, with the church, and just the whole picture of unity. I've literally never seen it like this ever before.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's bringing the unity?
Well, I think it goes to the leaders, doesn't it? Where the leaders are willing, to humble themselves and come together, and what they're doing is not the most important thing that's happening. It's just one of the things that God's doing. So what I'm seeing is the leadership is willing to kind of lay down their own, not so much the ministry, but lay down their own agenda, so to speak.
Yeah, it's more about agenda.
More about agenda, coming together, and for the sake of the bigger picture. Yeah.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
What's going to happen there? What do you predict?
I don't know. I've been giving to it for quite a number of years, but specifically in the last, 5 or 6 years, because I really do believe that God is moving there in great power, and lots of churches are being planted. So for me, when there's churches being planted as well, that's a really good sign, because it shows that it's not just about an event, but that the local church is being built, and so that's exciting for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your book, Transformed. Yeah. Just came out yesterday.
Yes.
So, yay.
Yay.
Why a book right now for you?
Yeah, well, it's never a good time. That's really the truth.
It's
never like a good time.
How did you find time to write?
Well, that's a good question. I think I had to make it a priority. And, I had to take a bit of time off just to really focus on it. But I did it because I really felt like the Lord wanted me to do it. And so I was really intentional with that. And I needed to focus because in the book, I'm a little bit more vulnerable about my own life, because I felt like that was important, what I'm talking about, that I need to be a little bit more vulnerable about my own weaknesses and the things that I felt like the Lord was taking me on a journey of deeper surrender. And so in order to do that, you got to walk through it. And so you have to be intentional with that. But also, I just felt like it was a bit therapeutic as well. And it was just the right time. It just felt like this was the Lord. This was the right season for this.
Okay. What, in your life, what are the points of surrender for you?
Well, I think it's ongoing. That's why I say I think that transformation is something that's a journey. It's not a destination. Like, we know where we're going, right? Hopefully. But the journey can be quite different than what we ever sign up for. So we think we're saying yes to one thing, right? And saying yes to God. And then we go on this completely different journey. And so for me, it's like this daily surrender of saying yes to the Lord. And it just turns out different than what we think, So I think it's the bigger picture of understanding that when we surrender to the Lord, it is an act of worship. And it's saying yes to God, time and time again.
What do you think the biggest mistake Christians make in this? Because I know for me, thinking that I had done it was a stumbling block. Thinking that I had already gotten to that point of surrender. And I've had some pretty significant ones where dying of cerebral malaria and you surrender. But then the temptation to pick your life back up and say, well, it's
that's
time
the temptation.
for me.
Yeah, that's the temptation, isn't it?
But it's so casual to do that and not even have a temptation moment. You just wake up one morning and say, well, I'm
doing pretty well.
Yeah, I don't really feel like whatever. And that dying daily is difficult to do.
It is difficult to do. And I think we do get good at leading our own life, especially if we've been saved a long time. I think we can function out of what we already know rather than functioning out of God's presence and what is God saying today and where is God taking me today. Because I've never once gone before the Lord and it's been like, oh yeah, everything's great. You know what I mean? Like if you ask the Lord what's wrong with you, he's going to tell you. So I've found that big part of that,
he'll do it
gently. But part of that is transformation, because if the Lord's showing it to you, if he's revealing something, it's because he wants to heal it, right? So it's actually, I think, mercy of when we live our lives from that place of surrendering, that it's not like, oh, I have to do this. It's like, this is just my response of worship to the Lord. And in turning towards him, that he's going to show me things about myself, that he's going to cause me to grow up in different ways that I probably wouldn't otherwise.
Well, you know, I know it's in the last chapter of the book where you talk about knowing God's will. And that seems to be such a, particularly in the charismatic community of America, such a drive.
Yes.
You know, what's the word of the Lord for me, or what's the will of God for me? And what do you say to somebody that says they haven't discovered that?
Yeah, I would say, I think sometimes we're looking for something ideal, and there is no ideal situation. I think when it comes to calling, God creates us and he calls us. And I think that finding that road of our calling, so to speak, is found in the next step of obedience. So I think sometimes we get ahead of the game, or we think we want to do something. You know, you think you want to do something, but it's not ideal. And it is an illusion that, you know, bigger is better, or if I just get over here, or just have these friends or whatever. I think this track is just obeying God in the next step, just saying yes to him in everyday life.
Okay. Yeah. For you, how did you discover that you were called into ministry?
Well, I don't think I discovered it. I think it just got revealed to me in those steps, because I think things get revealed by God's Spirit. If I discovered it, it would be what I want. So I don't feel like I pick calling. I feel like calling actually picks me. If I'm walking in what God's called me to do, then he's going to lead me into my calling. And so I think to live from that place is actually more, it causes me to live more free, because it doesn't put the pressure on me. Like, I don't have to make this happen. I don't have to make this calling happen. I don't have to be this person. I just have to obey God. And when I obey God, he leads me into my calling.
It's been tough for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, of course it has. It has been tough.
Did you ever have a moment where you thought it would be better not to obey?
Only one. Only one.
Multiple moments?
I mean, I'm like, the funny thing about me is that when I drive, I'm always talking to the Lord. So I tend to talk to the Lord when I'm driving, and I look crazy, right?
You ever miss your exit?
Yeah, of course I have. So I think there's been lots of things where I've just talked to the Lord where, Lord, I don't want to do this. I don't feel like I want to do this. Are you sure this is you? And there's times when I'm like, I really don't want to do what I feel like God's leading me in to do. And the Lord reminds me of that scripture in Ezekiel where he says that he puts his Spirit inside of us that even helps us obey. And I pray that, honestly, Gordon, I have to pray that almost every day, because...
And you need to pray that.
You need to pray it, but sometimes you got to pray it more, because sometimes you don't really want to do what you feel like God's wanting you to do.
Because it's his will that enables you to do that.
Yeah, and I'm the one that needs to transform into that. I'm the one that needs to conform to what he's saying.
As you can tell, we can talk a long time, but we're out of time. I want to encourage you to get a copy of Christy's new book. It's called Transformed, and it's available wherever books are sold.